Rachel Zegler has been blacklisted and cancelled by Disney after the Snow White remake flopped at the box office and caused them to lose millions. For months, Disney's live-action remake of Snow White has been embroiled in controversy. The actress portraying Snow White, Rachel Zegler, or Ziegler, really don't know, has been at the center of it all, and she faced super sharp scrutiny after she slammed the OG animated cartoon Snow White that was released way back in 1937. My favorite Disney movie, by the way. Now, in several press interviews for Disney's remake, she can be heard calling the original movie extremely outdated and weird. Sources have now said that Rachel knows her future in Hollywood relies on Snow White being a success after she was essentially blacklisted from movies due to other eyebrow-raising comments she's made in regards to politics and other things we just won't dig into just yet. Zegler is now considered a huge liability, and everyone knows it. Well, it's safe to say her future in Hollywood probably won't be a bright one because the movie has flopped. Its ratings are about 1.5 out of 10, and it made about $43 million opening weekend, which is way below goal. They set that goal at like $100 million. Even the Dragon Ball Z movie has a higher rating. Yes, let that sink in. And no offense to any of you who are Z fans, I'm just saying. Sources that are close to the Snow White movie have described the experience as one massive headache after another, adding that everyone involved was and still is just extremely over it. A source said days before the movie was released, they thought that they were breaking new ground to create something everyone could love by making this, more diverse version. But $270 million later, executives are terrified. The same source, reiterated that Rachel needs Snow White to be a hit in order to salvage her reputation. They went on to say she has been essentially blacklisted by the industry, which is sad given her massive talent. Bosses want to just get this movie out there and be done with it. It will either be a massive success or one of Disney's biggest losses. Well, as of right now, it looks like it really is on track to being Disney's biggest loss thus far. Super ouch. Ever since it was revealed that the company would be remaking the much-loved classic, the new version has been shrouded in scandal, from a backlash over casting and disappointment over plot changes to arguments over whether or not Disney should include dwarfs in the remake, and Rachel's shocking comments. The same source said people who see Snow White want to see the film they grew up with. The seven dwarfs are synonymous with this film. Tampering with that was a huge mistake. So too was casting Rachel. She is now a liability. The fallout first began when Disney announced that Rachel, a Colombian-American star, who is best actually known for portraying Maria in Steven Spielberg's West Side Story, would be starring as Snow White. Now, traditionalists were unhappy that a Latina actress had been picked to portray the German character, since Snow White is famously described as the fairest one of all, with skin as white as snow in the fairy tale. Now, things only got worse when Game of Thrones actor Peter Dinklage, who has dwarfism, went on to a fierce tirade basically against the movie, calling out Disney for pursuing a backward story about seven dwarfs. Now, he actually made a statement that said, "Take a step back and look at what you're doing there. It makes no sense to me. You're progressive in one way, but you're still making that bleeping backward story about seven dwarfs living in a cave together." Soon after Dinklage's, outburst, the network announced that instead of using dwarfs, Snow White's companions would just be magical creatures. But the decision only sparked more fury, especially from other actors who have dwarfism, who said Disney's removal of the characters only took away a chance for people in their community to star in the film. Geez, like a lose-lose situation at hand, no doubt. No one is ever happy, huh? People became more outraged when Rachel started teasing a slew of changes to the plot, explaining that the original was decades old, needed an update, and she said it would focus much less on Snow White and the prince's love story, but rather follow the princess's path to becoming a leader in her own right. But her admission left many of the fairy tales fans terrified that the new version would, veer too far from the story that they loved, while others accused Disney of making unnecessary changes in its attempt to be more woke. Now, the movie only became even more murkier after a series of interviews that showed Rachel slamming the original story went absolutely viral. Not only did she admit that she hated the animated flick because she was scared of it as a child, but she also branded the prince a stalker. It's even reported that Rachel refused to sing the beloved song "Someday My Prince Will Come," from the 1937 Disney classic. Instead, the tune has been replaced with feminist anthem "Waiting on a Wish." Now, one insider said she was simply out of control, and said Disney at that point just didn't know what to do with her, insistence on airing her progressive views. Firing her could have been an option. No? Maybe? I don't know. Seems logical to me, but what do I know? things then got even more confusing when Disney, shared its first official look at Snow White last October, and it showed Rachel sitting in a cabin surrounded by 7 CGI dwarfs. Many were left confused by the dwarfs in the image, since the company had previously stated that it wouldn't be using dwarfs at all. Producers are said to have U-turned on their decision to include a diverse range of actors to play the dwarfs after receiving backlash from Peter Dinklage. Snow White star Rachel Zegler was also slammed as immature by Disney producer Mark Platt's son Jonah Platt in an explosive rant after the film flopped at the box office. Now, Jonah called out the actress in a now since deleted Instagram comment after a critic labeled his father as creepy as heck for flying to New York City to chat with Zegler about her political social media posts. Well, he was not happy or impressed. Jonah clapped back, basically saying, "Yeah, my dad, the producer of an enormous piece of Disney IP with hundreds of millions of dollars on the line, had to leave his family to fly across the country to reprimand his 20-year-old employee for dragging her personal politics into the middle of promoting the movie." Jonah claimed that Zegler signed a multi-million-dollar contract to star in and promote the live-action musical. He continued to say, "This is called adult responsibility and accountability," adding that the star's actions clearly hurt the film's box office, which is true. Responding to the critics' remark that Zegler was entitled of free speech, Jonah argued that free speech does not mean you're allowed to just say whatever you want in your private employment without repercussions. Also true. Jonah also accused the actress of making the cast and crew collateral damage. He said tens of thousands of people worked on that film, and she, took over the conversation for her own immature desires at the risk of all the colleagues and crew and blue-collar workers who depend on that movie to be successful. Narcissism is not something to be coddled or encouraged. Mr. Platt's fiery response came after entertainment industry magazine Variety reported that Mark Platt encouraged Zegler to work with a social media guru after she took aim at the president and his supporters. Without getting into it, she basically wished all supporters to have just no peace in their life ever. Disney executives reportedly were worried that her political statements would deter half of their potential audience from seeing the multi-million-dollar movie. The Hunger Games star later apologized for her remarks and agreed, to have her posts vetted by the expert leading up to the film's March 21st release. Now, according to the outlet, there had already been tension between Zegler and the studio after she shared another political message while celebrating the Snow White teaser trailer's success in August of 2024. That issue became even more loaded with the casting of Gal Gadot as the evil stepmother, given her vocal support of the other side. So yeah, political minefield, not exactly ideal for a family film from a Disney studio trying desperately to avoid political minefields. Still, I don't think, either the online left or the online right had much to do with the film's underwhelming box office debut. That was mostly due to lukewarm reviews, Disney live-action remake fatigue, and just general movie-going, apathy during the first weekend of March Madness. Now, it's my favorite kind of box office disappointment, the one that's just not that good or interesting. That said, it's a Disney movie. These things tend to have long legs because no matter how hard parents try to resist the promise of 2 uninterrupted hours when the only decision they have to make is which candy their kid can eat is irresistible. These films almost always find a way to make their money back. Now, people have taken to social media to discuss the downfall of Rachel and also the flop that is Snow White. One person on social media shared their thoughts and said, "Disney should have left old dogs lie with Snow White. The Grimm brothers fairy tale is a little more involved than the Disney movie. Disney stripped many details from the story to add songs and show off their animation since the movie would be the first feature-length animated film. Snow White and the Huntsman and Mirror Mirror did way better jobs of modernizing the story, so digging up this corpse in 2024 was a poor choice. They chose poorly." Another person added, saying also, Zegler herself dug a hole by insulting the original film. Not the best thing when you're trying to get potential audiences to accept you. A third person chimed in and said, "The casting choices just don't make any sense. Gal Gadot had, or maybe still has, a career in modeling and is still very much in her prime. Rachel Zegler is a very attractive woman, IRL, which means in real life, but that haircut is atrocious and her makeup looks very plain at best. To have the mirror say the woman that looks like a live-action Lord Farquaad is the fairest when when asked by glammed up Gal Gadot strains credibility. I'm not one to get hung up on having accurate depictions of source characters, especially in fairy tales, but when the character's name is Snow White, casting someone, you know, with darker skin is a baffling choice. It would be like casting, you know, a flipper to play Smokey the Bear. Ouchie wawa. Anyways, what do you guys think? Will you be watching the new Snow White? Let me know if you've seen it. Thanks for watching. I'm your host Ashley. It's been great catching up.